In the midst of the chaos at the venue, I whispered a single word to Kate. Kate, could you please take me to the piano? But, okay, I understand. Kate and the other project members were all visibly shaken. Even so, as if she had made up her mind, Kate nodded and took my hand, leading me to the piano on stage. I sat down on the bench and ran my fingers across the piano keys. The sensation was familiar yet distant, and my hands trembled, but I steadied myself and gathered my resolve. My name is Mike. I'm a 30-year-old man who works as a janitor at a large instrument manufacturer that deals with all kinds of musical instruments. My life as a janitor is monotonous and uneventful, but it's peaceful, and I'm content with it in my own way. Yet, there's something I've never told anyone, a secret pride that I carry with me. When I was in high school, I was the top pianist in the country, winning piano competitions 3 years in a row. My mother was a piano teacher. Because of that, I grew up listening to piano music every day, even when I was still in her womb. Maybe because of that, I've always loved both listening to and playing the piano since I was a child. Whenever I had a moment, I'd be playing the piano, so much so that my mother, who taught me, was often exasperated by my obsession. I played the piano every single day, and to my fortune, I seemed to have a natural talent for it. I kept improving rapidly. By the time I was in elementary school, my mother decided she had taught me all she could, so she introduced me to a renowned piano instructor through a friend of hers. Even the piano instructor was amazed by my playing skills and praised me highly. With the encouragement of both my mother and my piano teacher, I decided to attend a high school known for its music program, where I continued to hone my skills. There were many rivals, and I became even more obsessed with the piano. As a result, I won piano competitions for 4 consecutive years. Winning 4 years in a row caught the attention of the media and the music industry, and for a time, I was seen as the next rising star. Not only my mother and piano teacher, but many other adults had high hopes for me. During that time, I carried the expectations of many people, and I took great joy in the fact that I could bring smiles to others through my piano playing. But then, suddenly, I lost all that fame. After graduating from high school, I started commuting to a music conservatory from my parents' home. One day, I woke up as usual, but my vision was completely black. I was certain that my eyes were open, but no matter how many times I blinked, the darkness didn't go away. To be honest, I couldn't think clearly, but one thing came to mind, and I calmly called for my mother. She came to me right away, and after explaining the situation to her, she took me to the hospital. The diagnosis at the hospital confirmed what I already suspected. It was due to my pre-existing condition. I had been severely nearsighted since I was a child. The cause was a genetic disorder I was born with. I had been told that it would eventually lead to blindness, but I thought that day was far off. The reality of being blind was hard to accept. Frustrated with my declining performance, and feeling as though I had let everyone down, I abandoned the piano that had been with me since childhood. I also dropped out of college. Even though I couldn't completely distance myself from music, I began working as a janitor at a musical instrument company. As a janitor, most of my interactions are limited to my fellow janitors. However, there's one employee outside of the janitorial staff that I've grown close to. Her name is Kate. At first, I didn't know much about her. I just heard that there was a beautiful and kind woman who was kind to everyone. I was a bit curious about her, but being both a janitor and blind, I knew how the other employees saw me. Even though people said Kate was nice, I never thought she'd interact with someone like me. but she treated me just as kindly as anyone else. At first, I think she spoke to me out of sympathy or something like that. But as soon as she learned that I knew a lot about music, our conversations deepened. After that, she started treating me like a regular friend. Today, during our break, we were talking about her work, like we often do. I secretly cherish these moments. When she talks about her work, especially anything related to music, she lights up with excitement. It reminds me of the joy, excitement, sadness, and frustration I felt back when I was fully devoted to the piano. Mike, are you listening? Oh, I let her cheerful voice pull me into my own thoughts. Yes, I'm listening. You're planning a concert to help the local kids enjoy music. Right, that's right. And guess what? The famous pianist, Mary, has finally agreed to perform. Really? I'm so glad your wish came true, Kate. Thank you. I'm so happy to be making progress on something I love. Hearing her bright voice made me smile. I've given up on my dream and taken a path that's very different from the future I once envisioned for myself. But Kate is working hard every day, fully committed to a job she loves and can proudly talk about. Seeing her dedication gives me strength every day. She doesn't know it, of course, but one day I hope to repay Kate for all the energy she's given me. With that thought in mind, I returned to my afternoon cleaning shift. One day, when I arrived at work, I immediately sensed something was off. The atmosphere was unusually loud and tense. Not understanding the situation, I turned to my colleague Joe. Joe is a fellow janitor and a good friend of mine. Knowing how difficult it is for me to commute alone due to my blindness, Joe kindly walks with me to and from work every day. Joe, do you know what's going on? It's really noisy today. I'm not sure. It looks like there's a crowd gathered by the notice board in the break room. Joe and I made our way toward the bustling break room. Near the notice board, I could hear Kate and her colleague Bob arguing. Worried about what might have happened to Kate, I stayed quiet, while Joe asked one of the other employees nearby, "Morning. We just got here, so we don't know what's going on. Can you fill us in?" "Morning, Joe, Mike. I just got here too, but apparently Bob is suddenly quitting the company, and that's why he and Kate are arguing." Quitting? That's pretty abrupt, but why is it causing an argument? I don't know all the details, but Bob was on Kate's project team, and since he's leaving without handing over any of his responsibilities, it's going to cause a lot of problems for the project. He must have been a valuable team member. Losing someone like him would be a huge setback. As I silently cheered for Kate, hoping her project would somehow succeed despite this, I heard their voices grow even louder. "No matter what you say, I'm not going to change my mind about quitting. In fact, I should have been the one leading this project, not you, Kate. You took that from me. And now I'm going to a company that values my skills properly." I was affected too, losing out on the project I deserved. If there's no handover, that's your problem to figure out. It became clear that Bob had a deep sense of rivalry toward Kate. The project, a major event for the community featuring a famous pianist, was something he had expected to be in charge of. Instead, it was assigned to Kate, who he viewed as his competitor. His frustration had built up, and now, with the project well underway and approaching a critical phase, Bob planned to quit without handing over his responsibilities, creating chaos for Kate as a way to express his dissatisfaction and force her into failure. I felt a surge of anger. He was blaming Kate for his own shortcomings and trying to sabotage her. I wanted to confront him, but Joe, standing next to me, stopped me before I could act. "Joe, let me go. I need to say something." "Mike, there's nothing you can do right now. Even if you confront him, We're just janitors. We don't have any power here." Joe's words made me hesitate. He relaxed his grip on my arm, sensing my internal struggle. "Just keep doing what you've been doing, Mike. Be there to listen to Kate and encourage her. If we make a scene, it might only make things worse for her." Joe was right. While Kate was well liked by most, a few people had whispered negative comments about her because of her kindness toward me. I didn't want to add to that. Reluctantly, I nodded in agreement. "All right, let's get started on today's cleaning." And with that, Joe and I got back to work. 2 weeks had passed since Bob's sudden resignation. Kate's project team still hadn't gained any new members. Our company had many other projects running simultaneously, and everyone was already tied up with their own tasks. There just weren't enough free people to help with Kate's project. Though I couldn't see, I could hear the strain in Kate's voice every day. I could tell she was pushing herself to the limit, and I was deeply worried about her. One day, something unusual happened. Instead of during our usual break time, Kate approached me during work hours. "Mike, do you have a moment?" "Of course. I just finished cleaning here." Kate wasn't the type to interrupt work for idle chat, so I figured it must be something important. I agreed to follow her, and we headed to a meeting room. Once inside, as soon as the door was shut, Kate spoke up urgently. "Mike, please. I need your help." "What?" "Kate, what's going on?" I asked, confused. "Why me? I'm blind, and I'm just a janitor. I don't think I can be of much help." "That's not true." Kate's sudden outburst took me by surprise. She had raised her voice so unexpectedly that even she seemed embarrassed. After clearing her throat, she continued more calmly. "I've talked to you a lot during our breaks, Mike, and I've always thought your knowledge of music was incredible. I consider myself pretty knowledgeable, but you know even more than I do." "No, that's just a coincidence," I started, but Kate cut me off. "I'd really like your help. As you know, since Bob left, we've been short-handed, and the project is in trouble. If you could lend your expertise, I think it would help us get back on track." "But I'm just a janitor. I don't think I'm allowed to be involved in something like this," I said, still unsure. "That's not a problem. I've already talked to my supervisor, and they've agreed that if you're willing, you can join the project." Kate responded quickly. "You work fast, but what about the other team members?" I asked, still hesitant. "I haven't told them yet, but once they see how knowledgeable you are, they'll definitely accept you. And if they don't, I'll make sure they do," Kate said with determination. I smiled at her enthusiasm as she continued. "Besides, Mike, whenever you talk about music, you seem genuinely happy. I want to work with someone who's that passionate. When someone enjoys what they do, they can spread that joy to others. That's why I know if we work together, this project will succeed. So please, help me." Her words left me both shocked and deeply moved. I hadn't realized how much I lit up when talking about music, and I never thought someone would see that and believe in me. Without realizing it, I turned to face where she was and nodded. "All right, I'm not sure how much help I'll be, but I'll do my best." "Thank you, Mike. I'm so grateful," Kate said, grasping my hand in joy. Later that afternoon, she took me to meet her supervisor. "I've gotten Mike's agreement, so he'll be joining the project starting tomorrow," Kate said. "Understood. Mike, we appreciate your help. For the duration of this project, you'll be focusing on it instead of your cleaning duties. The CEO has already approved it." "I understand," I replied. Next, we went to meet the rest of the project team. I was nervous. Kate had promised she would make them accept me, but I still had my doubts. I was blind, and while I stayed as informed as I could, it was harder to keep up with everything compared to when I had my sight. Would they really accept me? "Hey everyone, I've brought a new team member," Kate called out as she opened the door to the project room. I followed her in, and as soon as the others saw me, their initial excitement faded. "You all know Mike, right? He's got incredible knowledge of music," and I asked him to join the team. He kindly agreed, so please welcome him. Kate introduced me. "Hi, everyone. I'll do my best to support the team and contribute as much as I can," I said, trying to sound confident. There was some scattered applause, but it was clear I wasn't fully welcomed. It stung a bit, but I reminded myself that none of them really knew me. They only knew that I was blind. I resolved to work hard and prove myself, so I quickly shifted my focus to helping with the project alongside Kate. The work turned out to be more challenging than I expected. We had to consider so many factors: what age group to target, what pieces to perform, whether to add any additional events, where the venue should be, and even what piano to use. I had never been involved in organizing a concert or competition before, so I was surprised by how much went into the planning. Still, my past experiences seemed to come in handy. Although I couldn't assist with writing proposals or checking supplies, I could offer insights from a performer's perspective. Having participated in and attended many concerts and competitions throughout my life, my feedback was valuable in helping to shape the event from both the performers' and audience's points of view. At first, the project members kept their distance from me, seeing me as blind and unable to contribute. But as they witnessed my interactions with Kate up close, their attitudes began to shift. Over time, I became more integrated into the team. Now I was actively exchanging ideas with them, and they considered me a valuable partner in shaping the project. Thanks to everyone's efforts, the project ran smoothly, and we received the incredible news that the concert tickets had completely sold out. When we heard that, we all hugged each other and shared in the joy. Today is the day before the concert. Kate, the project members, and I have gathered at the concert hall for the final rehearsal. The entire team reviews the flow of tomorrow's concert. Given the size of the event, we weren't satisfied with just one run-through. We carefully went over every part of the program twice to ensure everything was perfect for tomorrow. After finishing the review, we all gathered in the main hall. The big day is tomorrow. "Thank you, everyone, for all your hard work so far," Kate said with excitement. "It's a bit early for thank yous, don't you think, Kate?" Paul, one of the team members, teased her, and we all shared a laugh. "True. The real test is tomorrow. I'll save my thanks for after the concert is a success. Now let's form a circle and get ready for tomorrow." Kate smiled. Everyone linked arms in a circle. Since I couldn't see where to place my arm, the team members beside me gently took my hand and guided me. "All right, are we ready? Let's give it our best tomorrow," we all shouted in unison before dispersing. "Mike, do you have some time after this?" After the other team members left, Kate called out to me. "Yeah, I'm just heading home," I replied. "Would you mind staying with me for a bit?" "Of course, I don't mind." Once she made sure I agreed, Kate took my hand and led me to a seat in the concert hall. "I'm going to play a little on the piano now. Could you listen for me?" "Sure," I said, settling into the seat. Kate left my side and walked toward the piano on the stage. I heard her footsteps stop, followed by the sound of her adjusting the bench. Then, a melody began to flow from the piano. The piece was simple, but I could feel the joy in her playing. It amazed me how much emotion could be conveyed through the sound of the music alone. I let myself be carried away by the melody until it gradually came to an end. I heard the piano keys fall silent, followed by the sound of the bench moving and Kate's footsteps as she approached me. "Mike, how was that performance?" she asked. It was wonderful. I could tell how much you were enjoying playing, I replied enthusiastically. Kate laughed at my eager response. I'm glad to hear that. I've never really played the piano before, so your words mean a lot to me. After a brief pause, Kate continued speaking. Mike, I really believe that music conveys the performer's emotions. When I was little, my parents took me to a piano concert. The pianist's performance was incredible, and I could feel how much joy they had in playing. It made me feel happy too, and even as a child, I was deeply moved. Since then, I've always wanted to be involved in the music industry. I didn't have the talent to perform, so I decided to work behind the scenes, supporting music. One day, I want to inspire someone else, just like that pianist inspired me. Kate's voice was filled with a mix of nostalgia and admiration. I could relate to the feeling she described. When I was young and still inexperienced in playing the piano, my parents took me to a concert by a world-renowned pianist. I remember vividly how the emotions of the performer resonated directly with me, and I thought to myself, I want to be like them. I want to play like that. That moment deepened my passion for the piano. So tomorrow is the first step toward that dream, I said. Yes, she replied enthusiastically. I knew I would never become the kind of pianist who could inspire the next generation like I once dreamed, but I could still help someone with the same passion as Kate. I made a firm decision that I would do everything I could to make the event a success tomorrow, to help Kate bring that sense of wonder and inspiration to everyone who attended the concert. The day of the concert arrived. Kate, the project members, and I met up at the office first. We needed to collect the items we had left behind that were essential for the day. And there was also consideration for my safety as a blind person. We all traveled together to the venue in the company's van. Since we still had plenty of time before the concert started, there was no one at the venue yet except for us and the staff. Let's make sure everything is ready. We have some time before the doors open, but let's be thorough and check for any overlooked details. Please handle your assigned tasks with care, Kate instructed. Yes, we all responded in unison, then began working on our respective duties. Since I couldn't visually confirm things, I worked alongside Kate, assisting with overall checks and taking notes on anything she needed me to remember, almost like a secretary. After a while, as we were preparing to take a break before the opening, the atmosphere around us suddenly became tense. Wait, is that? What's he doing here? Who? Hello everyone. Long time no see. From the tone of the two voices, I could sense that someone unwelcome had arrived, but I couldn't tell exactly what was happening. I was about to ask when I heard a familiar voice. It was Bob, who had left the company some time ago. Long time no see, Bob. What brings you here today? Kate asked, her tone neutral. Come on, don't be so cold, Bob replied with a chuckle, though his voice soon turned serious. I've been reflecting on how I selfishly left the project before. I can't offer much help now, but I brought some refreshments and snacks as a small apology. Please share them with the staff and performers. Bob handed over the refreshments to someone, and then he left the venue. It's too late to apologize now, Paul muttered in frustration. Next to me, Kate was quietly inspecting the contents of the bags Bob had left. While I silently agreed with Paul's words, something about Bob's tone felt insincere. I wanted to ask Kate about it, but she cut me off before I could speak. What's done is done, and the concert is going smoothly. Plus, it looks like Bob genuinely reflected on his actions. He even brought the performer's favorite drink, she said, her voice cheerful. Seeing Kate's excitement, I pushed away the small doubt that had crept into my mind and accepted the drink she handed me. Once everyone had their drink, we stood up to distribute the refreshments to the rest of the staff and the performers. After successfully handing out drinks to everyone, the project team gathered for a final pre-opening check. We meticulously went over everything to ensure there were no issues. Once we confirmed everything was in order, the doors opened, and the audience began to file in. The guests were guided to their seats without any problems, and soon it was time for the concert to begin. The lights dimmed, and the sound of enthusiastic applause filled the room before gradually fading away. A beautiful piano melody began, and just as I started to feel relieved that things were progressing smoothly, something went wrong. A noise echoed from somewhere, followed by a scream. In the chaos that ensued, I couldn't figure out what had happened. Grabbing Kate's arm, I asked urgently, "Kate, what's going on? What was that scream?" "Mike, I don't know what to do." The pianist suddenly collapsed. "What? Why?" "No, we need to call an ambulance immediately." "Right, I'll do it now." The event was temporarily halted as Kate rushed to call for an ambulance. With the audience in a state of shock and confusion, our project team split into two groups, one to assist the pianist, and the other to calm the crowd. Kate, Paul, and I focused on helping the pianist. Thankfully, the ambulance arrived quickly, and Paul accompanied the pianist as they were rushed to the hospital. Even with the commotion still echoing through the hall, Kate remained frozen in place. I didn't know what to say to her, so I stood there, uncertain. After some time, Kate finally spoke. "We worked so hard, all of us." And now, her voice was shaky, as though she was holding back tears. I could hear the sadness and frustration in her words, and it reminded me of myself when I first lost my sight. Back then, I tried to put on a brave face for those around me, but inside, I was devastated. I felt the pain of having my dreams shattered, and the frustration of not understanding why it had happened. Looking at Kate now, I realized she was on the verge of becoming who I had once been. Just yesterday, she had spoken so happily about her dreams. I couldn't let her lose that part of herself, not like I had. Determined, I placed a hand on her shoulder. "Kate, Mike, I'm sorry. I zoned out for a bit. With the pianist gone, we'll have to cancel the event, won't we?" With a voice that sounded like she was about to cry, Kate spoke, and I shook my head in response. "Kate, don't give up. There's still a way." "Mike, but without a pianist. Take me to the piano." "What? But, Mike, you." I cut Kate off, who was clearly confused. "It's fine. I'll make it work. Just trust me like you did when you first asked me to join this project." "All right, I'll take you to the piano." Kate gently took my hand from her shoulder and began to lead me towards the piano. "Kate, what should we do next?" "Wait, where are you taking Mike?" One of the project members in charge of calming the crowd, called out to Kate. "We're continuing the event. I'm taking Mike to the piano." "What? But Mike." "It's okay." Reassuring Tom, we continued walking straight towards the piano. Kate guided me to the seat in front of it, and I sat down. The moment I did, the audience fell silent. They knew I was blind. I could feel their curious and skeptical stares, wondering what I was going to do. Surrounded by the silence and those uncomfortable gazes, I found myself extremely nervous as I sat at the piano for the first time in years. I had participated in countless competitions and concerts before, and my hands had never shaken like this before a performance. Back then, I was confident. I had thought that even if I lost my sight, I could still play. But when it actually happened, I became so afraid of making mistakes that I hadn't played in front of people for years. Now, with 12 years of not playing and a fear of mistakes, my hands trembled, and my fingertips felt cold. I tried to warm them by opening and closing my hands, when suddenly I felt warmth. It was Kate's hand. She had moved closer to me and whispered softly, "Mike, I believe in you. You'll be fine." With those words, my hands stopped shaking, and warmth returned to my fingertips. I nodded at Kate and slowly withdrew my hand from hers. Kate must have noticed, because she took a small step back from me. I gently caressed the piano, placed my fingers on the keys as I used to, and began to play. As soon as I started, the faint murmurs from the crowd disappeared entirely. Everyone was watching me play, speechless. The atmosphere reminded me of the piano competition I played in when I was a 10th grader, the last competition before I lost my sight. Even though I couldn't see, I could still play like I used to. No, I felt like I could play with even more emotion now that I couldn't see. As I continued to play, I realized it had all just been in my head. Relieved, I poured even more emotion into my piano playing. I wanted to make sure the event didn't end in failure, to show the children who had come today how fun music could be, and to ensure that none of the attendees would regret coming. But most of all, I wanted to ease Kate's sadness and frustration, to help her once again pursue her dreams with all her heart. Lost in the music, I had no sense of how much time had passed. Eventually, I played the final note, letting the melody fade away. For a brief moment, the hall was silent. Then, it erupted into applause and cheers. I sat there, dazed from the intensity of it all, until Kate approached and tapped me on the shoulder, snapping me back to reality. I stood up from the piano, bowed deeply towards the audience, and the applause, which had momentarily quieted, surged again and continued until I left the stage. With Kate's help, I made my way backstage to the dressing room. As soon as we entered the room, all the tension left my body, and I collapsed onto the floor. "Mike, are you all right?" "I'm fine. I'm just relieved," I replied with a wry smile, and Kate, seemingly reassured by my words, laughed a little and crouched down to my level. "Mike, thank you so much. I was worried about how things would turn out, but thanks to you, we were able to carry out the event successfully. It's because you encouraged me, Kate. That's why I was able to face the piano again. So it's your hard work too. And the event isn't over yet. It's not finished until we've safely seen off all the guests." I smiled warmly at her, and she smiled back. "True. Well then, let's go greet the guests, Mike. I'm not sure I can stand just yet. So you go on ahead without me, Kate. I can't leave the hero of the day behind. But still, Mike, I'll lend you my shoulder. We're going together." Just as we were arguing, Tom came running over, insisting on lending me a shoulder, and I was practically dragged to the entrance of the hall. That performance was incredible. I got chills. "Your playing was amazing. Do you think I could ever play like that?" As the audience members expressed their gratitude and admiration, I responded, thanking them. In that moment, I thought to myself, all the hard work I put into practicing piano since I was a child had finally paid off. I was so glad I had met Kate, and that through my performance, I was inspiring children to follow their dreams. After we had finished seeing off all the guests, the event staff and the rest of the project members showered me with praise. Some asked why I hadn't told them I could play piano, while others admitted that my performance had moved them to tears. It was all incredibly heartwarming. The next day, one of the attendees posted a video of the concert on social media, and I started to gain attention. As a blind pianist, the video even changed the way I was seen by the people at the company where I worked. I had gone from being the blind janitor to a renowned blind pianist. I could only smile wryly at how quickly things changed, but I couldn't complain. It definitely made my daily life more pleasant. It was also then that the company's president, who had known that I had won first place in piano competitions every year from my freshman to senior year of high school, approached me. He asked if I would consider restarting my career as a pianist, with the company sponsoring me. The truth is, I could never forget your piano performance back when you were in high school, Mike. It was so incredible that I always hoped that one day, even after you lost your sight, you'd return to the piano. That's why I hired you as a janitor, thinking maybe the opportunity would come. So when I heard about the concert, I was really disappointed I couldn't attend. Thanks to the encouragement from the president, who had believed in me all these years, and Kate, I made the decision to officially begin my career as a blind pianist. After I declared to the president that I would become a pianist, Kate, some of the project members, and I went to visit the hospitalized pianist who had collapsed during yesterday's performance to check on her and find out what had happened. At the hospital reception, we gave her name and explained our reason for visiting, and we were quickly shown to her room. "Excuse me, Mary, how are you feeling?" I asked. "Thank you all for coming. I'm feeling fine now, and I'm actually scheduled to be discharged today," Mary replied in a cheerful voice that put us at ease. Kate continued, "We're so sorry for what happened yesterday. We failed in our oversight, and it put you in danger. Please don't apologize. I know what kind of people you are. I never suspected you would do something like that." What exactly happened?" Kate asked, her voice filled with concern. "Well, I'm usually in good health, so I was confused about why I collapsed. When I asked the doctor, they told me there were traces of sleeping pills in my drink. You gave me that drink, right? I thought maybe it was the colleague I had issues with." At Mary's words, we all turned pale. "I can't believe this. I am so sorry for the actions of one of our former employees. If there's anything we can do, it's all right. You've already been through enough. I know you've been dealing with the aftermath of the event, so I've already handled it on my end." "What?" "Well, I'm a somewhat well-known pianist, so I've already contacted several key figures in the music industry about what happened. And it turns out the company that colleague joined after leaving yours. My nephew is the president there. When I told him, he was furious. That person will likely be fired soon." Although her voice was calm, it felt unnervingly cold. We apologized once again, made arrangements for a future performance, and left the hospital, all silently agreeing to never cross Mary again. "She was terrifying," Kate whispered. "Yeah, I always thought she was gentle and never got angry, but they say the calmest people are the scariest when they're upset. I definitely don't want to make her mad again." Everyone nodded in solemn agreement. Back at the company, I shared the hospital incident with the president. Apparently, Mary had already sent him the same message and confirmed she had indeed informed the heads of various music companies. Later, we learned that the story had spread across the entire industry, and Bob, the culprit, had been fired from his job. The news about Bob's actions was so widespread that his chances of finding another job in the music industry were slim. While I felt a bit of sympathy, I also knew he was responsible for his own fate. 1 year has passed since the day I decided to restart my career as a pianist. Over the past year, I've spent countless hours practicing, just like I did in my youth. I participated in numerous competitions, performed in concerts, and attended others' performances to learn and grow. Little by little, I regained my former confidence, and more people began attending my concerts. Today marks the 1-year anniversary of my return as a pianist, and I'm holding a large-scale piano concert to celebrate. The event staff are the same members from that fateful day, of course. I made sure to reserve the best seats for them so they could hear me play up close. As the concert began, I played each piece with care, putting all the emotions I had back then into the music. After each piece, the audience erupted into applause and cheers. When the concert finally came to a close, I stood up, bowed deeply, and then picked up the microphone to speak. Over the years, being blind has presented many challenges, but thanks to the people sitting over there, I've been able to overcome those challenges, especially Kate. If it weren't for you, Kate, I wouldn't be here today. I want to keep chasing my dreams by your side. Kate, will you marry me? The faint sound of Kate's yes was drowned out by the audience's thunderous applause. And so, together, Kate and I took the next step in our journey, walking forward to inspire others through the power of music.
The bill comes to $3,000. If you can't pay, you might as well call your dad. I went to a high-end hotel of a client, hiding the fact that I'm the daughter of the company's chairman. The hotel manager, Susan, greeted me with a condescending attitude. It's surprising how she manages to be the manager of a luxury hotel with that kind of attitude. This could turn into a serious problem, you know? I warned Susan. That's why poor people are so pretentious. I bet your dad is just as poor, isn't he? Are you planning to apologize and beg for forgiveness alongside your dad? Susan repeated her malicious remarks with a loud laugh. 5 minutes later, when my father arrived, Susan's demeanor completely changed. Her previously confident expression transformed into one of pure terror. Her face turning pale. Her body began to tremble. I couldn't help but smile. I'm Emily, 45 years old. My father is the chairman of Smith Group, a major American travel company. He currently has a trusted subordinate serving as the president while he supports him from behind the scenes. Inspired by my father, I joined Smith Group over 20 years ago. Of course, it wasn't through any connections. I secretly applied for the selection process at Smith Group when my father had already retired from his position as chairman. During the interview, I never mentioned my father and passionately expressed my strong desire to join Smith Group. When I finally received the job offer, I was so happy that I cried. After accepting the offer, I informed my father and requested that he treat me as a regular employee. Although surprised that I had gone through the selection process without his knowledge, he ultimately supported my decision to join the company. We informed the president, but it remained a secret from the general employees. The reason being, if they knew I was the chairman's daughter, it would create a rift between my colleagues and me. Everyone would treat me differently or become distant. I wanted to be genuinely recognized by those around me for my abilities. That's why I wanted to join as an employee, not as the chairman's daughter. In the end, I'm really glad that my father accepted my feelings. Smith is such a common surname, and unlike my father who wears branded suits befitting a chairman, I'm not brand conscious and prefer plain clothing. Thanks to that, my identity as the chairman's daughter has remained undiscovered for over 20 years since joining the company. Some of the executives might have noticed, but I pretend to be oblivious. My colleagues around me seem to have no idea about my identity, and I'm happy that they all treat me in a friendly manner. My current job mainly involves selling package tours. On the first floor of our headquarters, there's a customer service counter where general customers come to visit. I always wear my uniform and attend to the customers. I listen to the requests of the customers who come to the counter and suggest the most suitable travel plans for them. It's the perfect job for me since I love talking to people. Recently, many people compare travel sites online and make reservations. But I'm genuinely pleased that there are still customers who make the effort to visit our counter. It makes me realize that what my father built has taken shape. I also secretly take on certain jobs from my father. This is a top-secret mission that even my colleagues don't know about. Only a few trusted individuals handle this job. The reason being, it involves the movement of large sums of money. If the person isn't trustworthy, it could lead to significant problems down the line. Therefore, every time I undertake this job, I feel a sense of tension. I've been working hard, taking pride in being entrusted with such a task. I want to continue doing my best in whatever way I can to help grow my father's company. On this particular day, I visited a certain hotel. It's the Miller Hotel, one of our clients. We often work with them for package tours. The plans that combine the Miller Hotel with flights are quite popular, and there are many customers who repeat. As a result, these plans are regularly organized. This time, I visited the hotel using my paid vacation days. The Miller Hotel is a classic hotel located in the heart of a hot spring town. The hotel has been in business for about 100 years, and its building exudes a sense of history. However, the interior has been renovated and is clean, so it doesn't feel uncomfortable to stay there. The previous manager here was a gentle person with refined manners and a beautiful presence. Despite being in her late 60s, she showed no signs of aging and moved swiftly, yet never gave the impression of being busy. She had just the right amount of elegance, making her the perfect fit for a high-end hotel manager. She also paid great attention to detail. When I stayed here before, that manager took great care of me, and I grew to love this hotel. I had recently heard that the hotel manager had changed. Since this was my first stay since the change in management, I was looking forward to seeing what kind of person the new manager would be. They might be as swift as the previous manager, or perhaps a laid-back and wonderful person. There's also a possibility that they excel in their insight when it comes to reading guests. If that's the case, they might realize that I'm not just an ordinary guest. With these thoughts in mind, I entered the hotel, feeling a bit nervous. "Welcome. Do you have a reservation?" A woman who seemed to be the manager called out to me as soon as I stepped inside. The woman appeared to be around the same age as me, wearing a beautiful suit and having a lovely appearance. Amidst her vibrant presence, there was a sense of refinement. And from my impression, she seemed to be a kind person. I answered the woman's question. "Yes, I have a reservation under the name Smith. I'm here to check in." As she checked the guest list, the woman spoke to me with a friendly smile. "We've been expecting you, Ms. Smith. Let me assist you with the check-in process. Are you here for sightseeing?" She asked me with a smile. Actually, I work for Smith Group and was aware of this hotel. The last time I stayed here, the previous manager took great care of me. I said a little shyly, and I felt like the woman's eyebrow slightly raised. "What?" I felt as if the woman's face had suddenly changed from the cheerful expression just now, and I couldn't help but let out a sound. The woman looked puzzled at my words, but the next moment, she was smiling again. "I see. I'm Susan, the new manager of the Miller Hotel. Ms. Smith, please enjoy your stay with us," Susan said politely, giving a courteous greeting. I must have imagined Susan's eyebrow raising for a moment. After all, there's no way the manager of such a high-end hotel would show their emotions over trivial matters. Feeling reassured, I nodded to Susan. "Yes. Thank you very much." With that, I followed an employee called by Susan to my assigned room. "Wow! What a lovely room!" The room I was guided to by the employee had a wonderful interior. The outside view was somewhat obscured by trees, but apart from that, it seemed to be an excellent room. As expected, the room was clean and had the luxurious feel that comes with a high-end hotel. The room I stayed in previously also had a lovely outside view. It overlooked the hot spring town, and I could gaze at the beautiful night scenery. However, even for rooms of the same grade, there can be hits and misses, so I can't complain. I put down my luggage and took a moment to catch my breath. Even though it's just a one-night stay, I'm so happy to be staying at such a hotel. While it's part of my job, I want to enjoy this high-end hotel since I'm here. The new manager also seemed like a proper person, which is good. And since she appeared to be around the same age as me, there likely won't be another management change for a while. She has the same last name as the previous manager, so she might be the previous manager's daughter. If that's the case, there's a high possibility that her management style will be similar to the previous manager, and I can probably trust her. This assignment seems like it won't be too difficult for me. I thought I could relax, but I would soon realize that wasn't the case. After taking a dip in the Miller Hotel's renowned bathroom and settling down, it was already 7 p.m. It was the long-awaited dinner time. This hotel offers course-style room service. The staff brings the dishes one after another. From appetizers to desserts, everything is refined and a pleasure to look at. Even for the main course's luxurious steak, the staff lights the fuel and checks the doneness, providing attentive service. Just by absent-mindedly watching, the finest cuisine is prepared. The timing of the next dish's arrival is also perfect, allowing me to fully enjoy the dining experience. Of course, being a high-end hotel, they use an abundance of high-quality ingredients, and the taste is impeccable. I had set my dinner time for 7 p.m., so the staff should be bringing the meal to my room soon. At the Miller Hotel, the course dishes are prepared using seasonal ingredients and local ingredients harvested near the hotel that day. Therefore, you don't know what kind of dishes you'll be eating until the last moment. It's understandable that many people stay at the Miller Hotel every month just for the cuisine. I wonder when it'll come. I waited in anticipation of the meal. 30 minutes passed. There was still no sign of the meal being delivered. The surrounding rooms seemed to have already started their dinner, as I could hear lively voices. I waited with my chin resting on my hand, anticipating a knock on the door at any moment. However, there was no sign of anyone knocking. It's late. I wonder if they're busy. The scheduled reservation time had long passed. This was taking too long, no matter how you looked at it. Thinking that I might have gotten the reservation time wrong, I checked the confirmation email. But even after checking, it was definitely set for 7 p.m. I should probably go to the front desk and check, after all. Losing my patience, I decided to leave the room and head to the front desk. Just then, I ran into an employee who seemed to be serving dinner to a nearby room. I promptly called out to the employee. Excuse me. I haven't received my dinner even though it's past the scheduled reservation time. The employee responded in a flustered manner. We sincerely apologize. I'll check on it right away, so could you please provide me with your room number? It's room 302. I answered hesitantly. The employee then took out a sheet of paper with the guests' dinner start times and checked it. However, as they looked at the paper, they began to tilt their head in confusion. Is something wrong? I asked, feeling uneasy about the employee's behavior. The employee then said something astonishing. That's strange. It shows that the reservation for room 302 has been cancelled. I heard it from the manager just a while ago, so I don't think there's a mistake. What? I was puzzled by the employee's statement. I had spoken with Susan at the reception, but she never mentioned anything about canceling dinner. At that time, Susan even asked, Your dinner is still scheduled for 7 p.m., correct? No changes? So I had confirmed it with her. As the employee and I stood there perplexed, Susan appeared out of nowhere. She then looked at the employee. What are you doing here? If you don't hurry, it will interfere with serving dinner to the guests. As Susan said that to the employee hurriedly responded. I apologize. Please excuse me. and immediately left the scene. This left Susan and me alone. Susan looked at me and let out a deep sigh. "Ms. Smith, our employees are busy, so could you please refrain from calling them over unnecessarily? It's quite troublesome," Susan said, placing a hand on her cheek and making a troubled gesture. Despite being surprised by Susan's attitude, which seemed to assume I was at fault, I answered. "I only asked the employee earlier because my meal hasn't been delivered even after waiting for so long. More importantly, why was my dinner canceled without my consent? What's going on?" Susan's behavior was outrageous, no matter how you looked at it. As I glared at Susan, she let out a smile. "You said it was canceled at the reception, didn't you, Ms. Smith?" "We simply followed your instructions," Susan said, looking at me with a provocative gaze. "I never said anything about canceling," I told her in a sharp tone. But Susan didn't back down. "Even for room service, our meals require a certain dress code. That's how high-class our establishment is. For someone like you, Ms. Smith, with such a plain and common attire, it's a bit." Susan looked me up and down, as if licking my clothes with her eyes, and laughed. My face turned bright red at Susan's remark. She definitely canceled my meal on purpose. Being treated like this, I finally realized Susan's malicious intent. I couldn't let this slide. "I never said anything like that. And if it's about my clothes, I can change into something more appropriate, right? Anyway, please prepare my meal immediately," I told Susan. However, Susan said with a nasty grin, "The cancellation has already been processed, so we can't make changes at this point. There's another room service available, so why don't you try that? I'm not sure if you can afford it though, Ms. Smith, since it's quite expensive. Now, if you'll excuse me." As I stood there dumbfounded, Susan added as if remembering something. "Oh, and you've also canceled your breakfast, right, Ms. Smith? I'm telling you in advance, so don't you dare try to bother our employees tomorrow morning." With that, Susan promptly left the scene. "That manager pisses me off. What the hell is her problem?" I felt irritated by Susan's attitude, which was unacceptable for a manager and someone in the service industry. The nerve of her to cancel without my consent and then have that attitude. It was the worst service I've ever experienced at a hotel. In the end, I had to go to a nearby grocery store to get my dinner that day. "I feel terrible," I muttered, with dark circles under my eyes. After eating a sandwich from the grocery store for dinner and getting into bed, it was still the worst. The phone kept ringing from the front desk. When I answered, it was Susan's voice, laughing as she spoke to me. The content of her calls was utterly ridiculous. "We've received complaints from other rooms that your room is being noisy, Ms. Smith. Could you please keep it down?" I was asleep until the phone rang, and my room was completely silent. Therefore, there was no way there could be complaints about noise. "I'm sleeping quietly, so I think it must be a different room. Excuse me," I said and hung up the phone, but 10 minutes later, I received another call with the same content. I tried to ignore it, but the sound of the phone was so loud that I couldn't sleep. The phone ringing might also lead to new complaints. I had no choice but to answer the phone each time and deal with it. Thanks to that, I barely got any sleep and was completely sleep deprived. I felt absolutely terrible. I'm never staying at this hotel again, and I don't want to stay here any longer. I'm sure Susan already canceled my breakfast without my permission, and I don't think there's anything else for me to do at this hotel anyway. I decided to pack my bags immediately and check out. When I went to the front desk, Susan was standing there alone. The other employees were probably busy preparing breakfast. Originally, breakfast was supposed to be room service as well. In the hallway, I could see employees carrying delicious-looking dishes. Not being able to eat such wonderful food, I thought Susan had done something truly despicable. Honestly, I didn't want to see Susan, but since I stayed here, I had to settle the bill. With no other choice, I called out to Susan. "I'd like to check out, please." "Oh, you're leaving early. All the other guests are about to have breakfast now," Susan deliberately said that with a nasty grin on her face. I silently glared at Susan. It was entirely Susan's fault that I couldn't eat that breakfast. However, Susan didn't seem to care about my glare and started the checkout process in a good mood. I'm never coming back to the Miller Hotel again. After checking out, I plan to have breakfast somewhere else. Then, the next moment, Susan started saying something outrageous. "The bill comes to $3,000. If you can't pay, you might as well call your dad." "What? The bill is $3,000? What do you mean?" I couldn't help but ask Susan. I'm pretty sure when I booked the room, it was supposed to be $1,000 including meals. In the end, I didn't even get dinner, and my breakfast was cancelled without my consent. If it was just the room, it should have been at least $300 cheaper. I couldn't believe the price had tripled from the reservation amount. Susan then answered with a nasty grin. "Our hotel has a policy of charging double the room rate as a nuisance fee for guests who have caused trouble. Did you read the rules carefully, Ms. Smith? You were causing a disturbance with noise all night yesterday, right? So this is the natural amount." I was furious at Susan's outrageous statement. I was sleep-deprived and irritated because of Susan, so why was she making such provocative remarks? I argued back at Susan. "As I told you on the phone, I wasn't being noisy at all. And you canceled my breakfast and dinner without my permission, didn't you? Shouldn't you at least deduct that amount from the bill?" I said something perfectly reasonable, but Susan made an annoyed face. Susan really did nothing but irritate me. "Since you canceled it, it's only natural to include it in the fee. If you keep making a fuss, I'll call the police. With you working for Smith Group, this could get you fired, you know?" Susan said with a laugh. It's unbelievable how she can be the manager of a high-end hotel with that attitude. I clenched my teeth in frustration. I didn't want to let Susan have her way like this. I vowed to fight back. And I told Susan this. "This could turn into a serious problem, you know?" Even so, Susan didn't drop her arrogant attitude. "A serious problem? That's why poor people are so pretentious. I bet your dad is just as poor, isn't he? Are you planning to apologize and beg for forgiveness alongside your dad? You and your father are truly shameless." Susan repeated her malicious remarks with a loud laugh. "Don't just assume I'm poor," I calmly responded to Susan's statement. Susan could only act this way for now. My father already knew about yesterday's events, because I had just told him everything over the phone. My father was outraged when he heard my story. "Saying such things to Emily. I'll never forgive her." I felt proud of my father for getting angry on my behalf like that. And I had already called my father to come pick me up by car. He would probably arrive in about 5 minutes. While waiting for my father, Susan kept making condescending remarks toward me. "Why don't you just apologize and say you're sorry already? If you do, I might even let you pay in installments." "Well, the interest will be high though." "I'm not paying such an overcharged amount." I refused. But Susan didn't care about my refusal at all. "Well, even installments might be tough for a poor person. It's so sad to be in debt hell," she blathered on. She still seemed to want to look down on me as a poor person. Her personality was truly awful. I continued to ignore Susan's behavior. 5 minutes later, when my father arrived, Susan's demeanor changed. "Dad, I ran up to my father with a smile. Susan looked at my father's face with a dumbfounded expression. She must have realized who my father was. That person is. Her previously confident expression transformed in an instant. Her eyes were clearly shaken. Susan's face turned pale and began to tremble. I laughed. Do you know my dad? He's the chairman of Smith Group, I told Susan with a smile. Susan greeted my father while trembling. I'm always truly indebted to the chairman. So Miss Smith was the chairman's daughter. What a wonderful daughter you have. Susan said that with a smile, but her smile was clearly strained. And she was completely flustered. Susan's remarks were obviously just flattery, and it was clear as day that she was shaken up. I coldly told Susan, You're quite an amusing manager. Just a moment ago, you were making remarks that looked down on me as a poor person. Wasn't it something like, apologize and beg for forgiveness alongside your dad? When I asked that, Susan pretended not to know while breaking out in a cold sweat. I never said such a thing. Excuse me, but aren't you misunderstanding something? Susan said, glancing up at my father to gauge his reaction. Emily seems to like jokes. I've been striving to provide the best hospitality all along. I took out my smartphone. Actually, I recorded our earlier conversation. Would you like to hear it? Yesterday, I had received terrible treatment from Susan. Thinking that Susan might pull something again during checkout, I had recorded our conversation on my smartphone just in case. And just as I had predicted, Susan made some outrageous remarks. It pays to be prepared. When I said that, Susan glared at me. You sneaky little. She muttered in a voice low enough that my father couldn't hear. It seemed that Susan wasn't reflecting on her actions at all, even in this situation. I really had to question her integrity as a person. Therefore, I didn't care what kind of situation Susan ended up in after this. I explained to my father what had just happened. About how Susan had demanded $3,000 from me and proposed a high-interest installment plan. Of course, I also told him how she had looked down on him as well. While I was talking to my father, Susan's face turned pale, and she said, Stop! Don't say anything more! But I ignored her. By the time I finished talking, my father's face had turned bright red, and he was even angrier. That's just how my father is, doting on his daughter. Of course he would be furious. And my father told Susan in a firm tone, Let's cancel the talk about providing funds to the Miller Hotel. Please, anything but that. Susan looked like she was about to cry as she tried to cling to my father. And for good reason. In fact, the Miller Hotel's business had been deteriorating, and they were starting to have difficulties with cash flow. The Miller Hotel had originally prided itself on being a high-end establishment, but recently, the quality of their service had declined. That was most likely Susan's fault as well. It was obvious from her attitude during these past 2 days. Susan was friendly to guests who seemed wealthy or were male. However, her attitude clearly changed towards guests who were more down-to-earth or praised the previous manager. She might not have been as blatant as she was with me, but it was still at a level that guests would notice. Smith Group's main business was in the travel industry, but they also provided funding to hotels that they partnered with mainly for package tours. It was also a support project to help boost hotels even just a little. The Miller Hotel had been taken care of by the previous manager, so when we heard about their recent poor performance, there was talk of providing them with funds. The Miller Hotel was also popular for package tours. It would be a shame for such a hotel to disappear due to financial difficulties. That's what my father and the upper management of Smith Group thought. Susan kept glaring at me the whole time. She probably resented me, thinking that the talk of funding would fall through because of me. but the reality was completely different. I opened my mouth to speak to Susan. The real reason I stayed at the Miller Hotel this time was for the manager. You, Susan. Susan raised her eyebrows at that. Gone was any trace of the refined atmosphere of a high-end hotel manager. Her hair was a bit disheveled, and there were stains on her suit. If the previous manager had seen her like this, she would have screamed. "What do you mean?" Susan made a face as if she didn't understand what I meant. Certainly, if I suddenly told her that the purpose of my stay was for her, she would be confused. I gave Susan a brief explanation. I've been secretly conducting background checks on the hotels we provide funding to. Of course, it's under the instructions of Smith Group and as part of my job. We can't bring ourselves to help a hotel that would waste the funds we provide. What? Susan flinched when she heard my words. The manager of the Miller Hotel had just recently changed to Susan. Therefore, we didn't know what kind of person Susan was. If she was a strict person like the previous manager, there would be no problem. But if she was someone not worthy of boosting the Miller Hotel, there was a high possibility that providing funds would be a waste. In exchange for providing funds, Smith Group negotiates discounted accommodation rates for package plans. Securing a certain number of rooms during peak seasons was also part of the conditions for providing funds. This is to recover the amount of funds provided in the long run. In fact, we have steadily been able to recoup the money from the hotels we have funded so far. We're not a charity, so if we can't continue doing business with a hotel after providing funds, it would be a problem. That's why someone like me from Smith Group conducts an internal investigation of the hotel before providing funds. When I gave this explanation, Susan started trembling. What's wrong? I asked unintentionally as Susan clenched her fists and shook. Then she glared at me and said, "If you had told me beforehand, I wouldn't have acted like this. Doing this without saying anything is quite underhanded, don't you think?" Susan looked at me with accusing eyes. I was taken aback by Susan's remark. Susan was treating me like the bad guy. I couldn't understand why Susan was playing the victim in this situation. I said in exasperation, "There's no point in telling the manager, right? I want to see how the manager normally acts." Still, Susan wasn't convinced. But she was trying to argue with me somehow. She must be desperate because it was a critical moment for whether or not they would receive funding. I let out a big sigh and said, "Besides, I told you from the beginning that I was an employee of Smith Group. If there's talk of funding, shouldn't you have been more careful then?" Normally, if an employee from a company that's considering providing funds stays at a hotel, they should be a bit more cautious. Even if not giving special treatment, I think they would be a bit more polite. They wouldn't interact with such a high-handed attitude. Then Susan muttered in frustration, "I was annoyed that someone around my age could stay at a luxury hotel like this. And on top of that, you work for a big company like Smith Group. I can't even afford luxuries because our business is struggling." Susan said that and looked at me with a resentful expression. I was so appalled that I couldn't say anything. I never imagined that she would do such things for that reason. I composed myself and then spoke. "Even so, does that make it okay to charge unreasonable amounts and cancel meals without permission?" Then Susan snapped back. "I was going to serve you the meal if you apologized while crying. You're the one who hurt my pride. Isn't that natural?" "That's unacceptable for someone in the service industry," I muttered unintentionally. My father must have felt the same way, as he let out a big sigh. "Anyway, the talk of funding is off the table. This is final. If you have any complaints, please take them to Smith Group's point of contact." Then Susan said with a face that looked like she was about to cry, "No way. What will happen to this hotel without funding from Smith Group? Susan desperately clung to my father, trying to get him to provide the funds. Please, just provide the funding. I'll even make your daughter's accommodation free this time as a special offer. I'll include discount coupons too. But my father only shook his head. I quietly told Susan, "It was a good thing that it happened to be me this time, but if you did that to a regular guest, it would lead to credibility issues. You're unfit to be a manager." No way! At that moment, Susan collapsed to her knees. Tears were overflowing from her eyes. Susan's time as a manager was probably over. She had gone this far with me, someone associated with Smith Group, a business partner. No matter how much she regretted it, we would never provide funds to the Miller Hotel with Susan there. I paid the regular rate and left the hotel with my father. After that, Susan ended up leaving the Miller Hotel. In fact, after what happened, my father had contacted the previous manager. And the previous manager immediately scolded Susan and ordered her dismissal. The previous manager was Susan's mother, and she was currently working behind the scenes in accounting and other areas. As the previous manager, she had appointed Susan as the manager of the Miller Hotel, wanting her eldest daughter to take over. However, while Susan acted like a good girl in front of the previous manager, she actually had a selfish side. Without the previous manager finding out, she had apparently forced employees she didn't like to quit one after another. This was revealed through an internal report from other employees when Susan's dismissal was decided. Until now, everyone couldn't say anything because she was the previous manager's daughter. But that was over now. Complaints about Susan were apparently piling up one after another. At this point, even the previous manager couldn't ignore it. Susan was not only fired but also reportedly kicked out of her family home. Susan had lost both her job and a place to live. She had treated others as if they were poor, but it had come right back to her. Moreover, Susan had done terrible things not just to me, but to others as well. I believe it's a case of what goes around, comes around. Sometime later, there were eyewitness reports of Susan being spotted in the red light district. Apparently, her clothes were filthy, and she was in a pitiful state. Among the current employees at the Miller Hotel, there were those who held a grudge against Susan. Such people were probably spreading Susan's misfortune in an amusing way. In any case, it's no longer any of my business. I don't care what happens to Susan. 6 months have passed since then. I'm still working at Smith Group, as always. The only thing that has changed is that I've been promoted to a leader position. Ostensibly, I work in sales, and my colleagues don't know about my duties in conducting internal hotel investigations. And it's been decided that my father will not be involved in my promotion. In other words, this promotion is entirely based on my own abilities. That genuinely makes me happy. I think I will face hardships in my work going forward. But I intend to keep doing my best without getting discouraged. And someday, I want to become someone who can lead Smith Group, just like my father. That's my plan for now. I absolutely refuse to go on a trip with a dropout like you. If you really beg me on your knees, maybe I'll consider it. It was the day of the company trip. Roseanne, who didn't show up at the meeting point, had said those words. Moreover, it seems the other employees are with her too. Realizing everyone had betrayed me, I trembled with intense anger. Never come back. You're all fired, I declared, truly determined to fire them all. My name is Marcia. I'm a 35-year-old office worker. My family wasn't wealthy. My father was sickly and couldn't hold a steady job, so my mother had to work instead. But my mother's salary wasn't high either, and we were in a tough financial situation. My parents wanted to send me to college, but even as a child, I knew our household was struggling. I could have gone to college with a scholarship, but I hesitated when I thought about repaying it. Besides, I strongly wanted to enter society early and help out with the family finances. So I overrode my parents' objections and got a job at a private company after graduating high school. I still work at that company now. However, over 80% of the employees at our company are college graduates. So those of us who dropped out are a minority, and it can feel uncomfortable at times. Among the college graduate employees, there are some who look down on dropouts. In my previous department, there were 4 dropouts including me, and all the college graduate employees were good people. Thanks to that, there was no awkwardness, but the atmosphere in the document management department I was assigned to in April is not good. Everyone except me is a college graduate, and they seem to have looked down on me, a dropout, from the beginning. The department has a total of 13 people, divided into 3 close-knit groups including me. And the one standing at the top is the group led by Department Chief Roseanne. Roseanne is 51 years old and the oldest. She graduated from a famous private university and has the most power in the department. It's no exaggeration to say she runs the place. She has a loud voice and a vulgar laugh. I'm exhausted because of her. Due to Roseanne's influence, the people in this department look down on me because of my education. How did someone like you get assigned to an elite department like ours? I bet you cheated your way in, she said. Of course I didn't cheat. I came to this department with a purpose. That purpose was to investigate the actual state of the document management department. In truth, this place isn't a gathering of elites, but the opposite. It's a department where useless employees are sent, with poor performance. It has a bad reputation among the other departments. Since our company has a lot of college graduates, naturally the poor-performing employees are mostly college graduates too. Even Roseanne, who acts so high and mighty, only got hired through connections as a relative of a former executive. Her work is shoddy, inferior to mine. Not realizing this. You're a dropout, right? Then you must be ignorant about the ways of the world. I'm a college graduate, so I know about all sorts of things, she brags. The truth is, I'm no longer a dropout, but that doesn't get through to her. Incidentally, she rarely brags about anything besides her education. She really has nothing but her diploma. This department is kept around because even people like this can handle simple tasks. But there have long been calls to hire more capable people instead. So this time, I was secretly tasked with investigating whether it's worth keeping the department. If we try to shut it down right away, there will likely be backlash, so the plan is to gather enough evidence to justify closing it. That was the President Cedric's thinking. That's why I'm working here today too. It's been 3 months since I joined this department, but the employees' work attitudes are even worse than I imagined. Chatting while working is the norm. There are people who keep playing games even after their break is over, and people who say they're going out but then just go home before the end of the day. Whether you slack off or work hard, the pay is the same. I've heard people say. They seem to think they won't get fired no matter how much they goof off. Things were a bit better when I first arrived, but once I, a dropout, joined, I guess they figured they could dump all the work on me. They make me do their work while they slack off even more. Roseanne, the ringleader, is fostering this trend. This dropout seems eager to work, so give her lots to do. It bothers me to no end. Ever since joining this department, I've been working overtime constantly, to the point of physical and mental exhaustion. I've reported the situation to Cedric. The document management department will probably be dissolved soon. That's when it was decided the whole department would go on a trip together. This is an employee trip arranged by the company, with different destinations for each department. The budget doesn't allow for overseas travel, but we could go to Anchorage or Hawaii. Participation is voluntary, but in our department there's an atmosphere that makes it mandatory. I can't refuse. I wanted to either join another department's trip or call in sick. But then Roseanne appointed me as the trip organizer. Marcia seems like she'd enjoy travel planning, so I'll leave it all to you. In truth, she just doesn't want to do the tedious work herself. I had no choice but to start the preparations. Everyone wanted Hawaii, so I was going to book a hotel in Hawaii and get plane tickets. They made all sorts of demands, like wanting to swim in the ocean and eat cheap, delicious food. I felt like telling them if they have so many requests, they should make the plans themselves. But I grit my teeth and made the arrangements. I still had to handle my other work duties too. My overtime got even longer and my fatigue reached its peak. Honestly, I just wanted to not go on the trip and rest at home instead. But I struggled and put together a plan that fulfilled as many of the employees' wishes as possible. Everyone was satisfied with it. Even Roseanne was in. Oh my, this is a pretty good plan coming from incompetent Marcia. I'm looking forward to the trip. An unusually good mood. On the actual day, if anything comes up, I'm sure she'll tell me, you planned this, so figure it out. What a hassle. But once we get back from this trip, it's been decided that I'll transfer to a different department. The other day. I'm sorry for putting you through so much. I've coordinated with another department, so after the trip you can work there. Cedric told me. The trip is next week. I just have to put up with this problem group a little longer. I thought all that was left was to go on the trip and come back. Then the day of the trip arrived, and I got to the meeting place 15 minutes before the designated time. I planned the schedule with some buffer, in case anyone was late. But even after the meeting time, no one showed up. No matter how lax this group is about time, this is strange. Could I have told them the wrong meeting time or place by mistake? Thinking that, I checked the message records on my mobile phone and the itinerary, but there were no mistakes. What in the world is going on? I tried calling Roseanne for now, but I couldn't get through at all. I called 3 times to no avail. I called some other employees too, but no one picked up. I sent messages through the messaging app, but got no replies. The time for the flight is approaching. Won't someone, anyone, contact me soon? As a last-ditch effort, I called Roseanne one more time, and this time it connected. Hello? Where are you right now? I asked in a panic, and Roseanne replied in an annoyed voice. Where? Anchorage, of course. Anchorage? Why are they in Anchorage, the complete opposite of Hawaii? As I stood there dumbfounded, Roseanne let out a vulgar laugh. Surprised? The truth is, we wanted to go to Anchorage. So we had another employee arrange the plans for us here. Why would you do that? I worked so hard to make the schedule. This is too cruel. I felt a surge of intense anger, but she didn't seem to care at all. Are you mad, perhaps? Don't raise your voice like that. This was just a little prank. We did it to mess with you, the dropout. Going this far because of my education is too much. What are you going to do about the cancellation fees for the hotel and activities? I said sternly, but Roseanne wasn't bothered in the slightest. Like I would know. I absolutely refuse to travel with a dropout like you. If you really beg me on your knees, maybe I'll go. The hot chocolate serve here is so delicious. The moment I heard those words, an indescribably intense rage boiled up inside me. never come back. You're all fired. What? Fired? What do you mean? I could hear Roseanne's flustered voice, but I didn't care one bit. I hung up the phone immediately, determined to actually fire them. I called Cedric right after and explained everything that had happened. He was shocked by the audacity, but angered by the selfish actions of the document management department. Unbelievable, what the hell are they thinking? It's really rude to you, and since the reservations were made under our company's name, it could spread a bad reputation about us. I'll apologize to the hotel and such on our end, and I'll cover the cancellation fees for now. Of course, I'll make the employees pay it back later. As I talked with him, I calmed down and reflected on how I had made an overbearing statement. Thank you. In my anger, I said I would fire everyone. I'm terribly sorry. About that, don't worry. I was planning to dissolve that department and fire all the employees anyway. The other executives agree with me. Hearing that put me at ease. I see. I regret making such a threatening remark. No, it's really fine. You had a rough time getting caught up in this weird situation, Marcia. You're probably not in the mood for a trip, so just relax at home during the travel period. He said kindly and ended the call. I went back home too, and spent the 3 days I was supposed to be on the trip relaxing at home. I had been working overtime constantly, so I was able to heal my tired body and mind. My parents, who I live with, were surprised I came home suddenly, but they sympathized when I explained the circumstances. My dad, Bert, said, "You've seemed really busy lately. Get some good rest." So I took him up on that and rested well for the 3 days. Then when the trip period ended, I went to the office. Thinking this would be my last day in this department, I arrived 15 minutes before the start of business hours to find Cedric there. The employees who came into work were flustered, wondering why Cedric was there. Roseanne arrived 20 minutes late. Anchorage was the best. On top of that, in high spirits, saying. As soon as she saw Cedric's face, Roseanne looked like she might collapse. What is the meaning of this, coming in late without a care despite being a department chief? He yelled at her angrily, and Roseanne truly did collapse. I'm sorry. I relaxed a bit too much on the lands of Anchorage. But why is the president in a place like this? I came to make an important announcement. First, we have officially decided to dissolve this department. And all the employees belonging to it, except Marcia, are fired. Hearing that, the employees erupted in dismay all at once. What's going to happen to our livelihoods? Suddenly declaring we're fired is too cruel. Voices like that rose up. However, he wouldn't back down easily either. Shut up. Don't make a fuss when you haven't been doing your jobs properly. When Cedric scolded them, the employees fell silent, but Roseanne raised her hand. Cedric! What do you mean Marcia is the only one not being fired? She was investigating whether this department was necessary for our company or not at my request. Hearing that, Roseanne turned pale. What do you mean? So she was a spy? Isn't that an underhanded method? What's underhanded about it? When the investigation started, it wasn't decided that this department would be dissolved. If you all had been diligently doing your work, I intended to keep it going. But in reality, I heard you've just been slacking off. The company isn't a place to play around. Cedric probably doesn't want to have to say things like this. No one wants to give such a low-level lecture to adults. It's because of your own bad conduct that things turned out this way. Take this seriously and reflect on it. After he said that, most of the employees hung their heads awkwardly. They might be regretting their actions, but it's too late now. With this atmosphere, I thought they would accept being fired, but one person resisted. It was Roseanne. No matter what, I can't accept being fired. Do you even have any proof in the first place? This is a false accusation. I've heard that asking if there's proof is something criminals often say. I wish she would stop struggling and obediently go along with Cedric's decision. I took out a certain notebook from my bag. What's that? This is a notebook recording the actions of the employees in this department. I frequently wrote in it when I had the chance. Your abusive language and the ways you all slacked off on work are properly documented. And I saved the verbal abuse in a voice recorder too. Cedric made his decision based on this kind of evidence. Hearing that, Roseanne seemed to realize there was no escape. She glared at me and bit her lip. I thought that would make her settle down, but for some reason Roseanne confronted Cedric. I don't mind quitting if you fire Marcia too. Because she's incompetent and uneducated, you know. She must really hate me. Even in this situation, she's trying to drag me down with her. But Cedric didn't back down either. He slammed his hand on a nearby desk. Marcia is incompetent? What have you been watching? She's one of the most capable people in the company? Plus, she's not a dropout. She's a college graduate. What? What are you saying? She's a dropout. She said so herself. Hearing that, I sighed. I'm a college graduate. In March of this year, before being assigned to this department, I graduated from an online university. But Roseanne, you said an online university doesn't count as an education and treated me as a dropout, right? Did you forget? Is that so? But an online university is the same as a correspondence course. It doesn't count as a real education, right? That is a big mistake. Online universities are recognized by the government as universities, so if you graduate, your final education is college graduate. Really? I thought it was the same as that famous correspondence course kids do. But you know what? I heard people say online universities are easy to get into, so they're essentially treated the same as being a dropout, right? Why does she only take in information convenient for herself? It may depend on the company, but there are places that properly evaluate it as a college degree. There are people like me who attend online universities while working. Graduating college while working is very difficult, so if you appeal it well, it can be an asset. When I explained that, Roseanne said, "This is the first I've heard of that," with a dumbfounded expression. Seeing that, Cedric made an exasperated face. Our company implemented a system to support employees getting certifications and going to college about 5 years ago. We want our employees' lives to be better. This should have been clearly communicated to people at the department chief level. Is that so? I'm the type who doesn't really care about education or certifications, so I didn't know. Roseanne tried to make excuses and talk her way out of it. But that only made Cedric angrier. Don't make weird excuses. Hurry up and apologize. The conversation got sidetracked, but all the employees in this department are fired. And you'll have to pay for all the cancellation fees and such for the Hawaii trip. It's $540 per person. Then, screams rose up from the employees who had been quiet. I spent too much money in Anchorage. And, please wait another month. They were saying whatever they wanted. But Cedric shut down. Shut up! Your selfish actions cause trouble for many people. Those of you who don't have the money, Go withdraw it from the ATM right now. Those voices too, yelling. As many employees left, only Roseanne remained standing there. I thought she had the money. $540. $540. Can't it be $500? But she was muttering. Don't tell me you don't have the money? When I asked that, Roseanne screamed. There's no way that's true. I can't do it right now, but I think I can pay it someday. Doesn't that mean you don't have the money in the end? Plus, it's unclear when you'll be able to pay, right? I was stunned. To think there was someone at the department chief level who didn't have that much money. What in the world did you spend so much money on? Well, you see, I heard that if you buy trendy products and resell them online, you can make money, so I bought a ton of trendy products and that wiped out my savings all at once. They were supposed to sell, but partly due to anti-reselling measures, they didn't. A so-called reseller, huh? I never imagined my own boss was doing something like that. I didn't have enough money to buy brand name items, so I wanted to make money the easy way. Then this happened. I'm reflecting on it, so please forgive the Hawaii trip money. What a selfish reason. Cedric didn't seem inclined to forgive her either. Then we'll deduct it from your salary. Is that okay? Angrily saying. Roseanne teared up. I have debts too. How am I supposed to live from now on? I heard reselling is definitely profitable, but it's actually not. What's wrong with the world? You're the one who's messed up for reselling even if you have to take out loans. When Cedric yelled that, the employees who had gone to get money returned. Then Roseanne clung to those employees. I don't have money and can't pay for the trip. Please, pay for me instead. I'll do anything. However, the employees' reactions were cold. Please pay for your own trip expenses. Why do we have to pay? They retorted. Even the employee. I'm not your ATM, you know. They said coldly. Why? I've looked after you so much until now. I even treated you to hot chocolate in Anchorage. Roseanne was shocked and screaming. Still, the employees' attitudes didn't change. Don't act like we owe you for just a hot chocolate. And you say you looked after us, but I don't remember you doing much for us. You seemed like the type to be annoying if crossed, so we just hung out with you without really thinking. Annoying? Just hanging out? No way. You thought that? Roseanne seemed to be in intense shock and collapsed to the floor. Stop relying on others and pay with your own ability. You're an adult, so deal with the losses you created on your own. This all happened because your conduct was bad. When I said that, Roseanne tearfully said, I'll go to the ATM. I need to go to the bank too. And left. When she returned, she paid the $540, but her face was pale as a ghost. I think life will be tough for you from now on, but you reap what you sow. Please don't resent me or Cedric. When I said that, Roseanne just replied, okay, and didn't say anything else. After that, as planned, all the employees of the document management department were fired. People from other departments showed no sympathy at all, and were happy the useless personnel were gone. It seems the document management department's recent terrible work attitudes were well known to the other departments. Because of that, the atmosphere that they were unwanted in the company only grew stronger. Incidentally, I heard Roseanne is working part-time at a certain convenience store, but she frequently gets scolded by the manager. The manager yelled at her. You're someone with only an education and nothing else. Some employees testified that she was bawling. Roseanne, who looked down on people for their education, seems to now be in the position of being yelled at herself. I can only hope this makes her reflect on her own actions. As for me, I'm in the product development department, a prestigious one. Since I'm a college graduate, my salary went up too, and everything is great. The other day, I used my salary to give my parents a massage chair as a gift. They had both been troubled by stiff shoulders lately, so they were delighted. Precisely because my parents had a life full of hardship, I want to repay them from now on and have them spend their days laughing as much as possible. With that in mind, I'm working hard again today. There's no more land for us to lease out here. When I rushed into the major bank in my pickup truck, the female receptionist named Wendy gave me an openly disgusted look. And when I asked her to call the loan officer, instead of doing as I asked, she made this rude remark. If you're working at a bank counter, there's a level of customer service you're supposed to provide to any client, regardless of who they are. I don't have time to waste either. Especially during this season, I'm extremely busy with the harvest and everything. I finally managed to carve out some time to come here amidst all that. Irritated, I decided I'd had enough. Then I'm canceling the land lease contract. What? Wait, you're leasing out land ? Let me call the representative. Just wait a minute. She suddenly started panicking, but I left the bank without hearing her out till the end. As a result, she would come to regret her behavior in this moment. My name is Sharon. After graduating from agricultural college, I took over my family's farm instead of getting a job. Now at 42, with my elderly parents retired, I manage the vast fields alone. Marriage seems to be a high hurdle for someone from a farming family, so I'm still single. My family home is what you'd call a big landowner in the countryside, if I do say so myself. We own vast tracts of land, as well as numerous rental properties like apartments and parking lots. We do have fields, but actually, we could live comfortably even without doing any farming. However, my parents diligently tilled the fields and cultivated traditional vegetables that have been around for a long time. There are few farmers left growing these vegetables. If we quit, these vegetables might go extinct. They're precious things we've inherited from our ancestors. We'll keep it going as long as we're able. Saying that, they protected the fields passed down through generations. But my parents said there was no need for me to force myself to take over the farm. That land could be turned into vacant lots like our other properties, they said, but I'm an only child. If I don't take over, the traditional vegetables that our ancestors and parents have protected and inherited might die out in my generation. I didn't want to let my parents' efforts, carried on this far, go to waste. For these reasons, when I went to college, I chose an agricultural school and decided to take over the farm. There's a slow season in farming, but no days off. Every day is very busy, but by trying out new fertilizers, improving the soil, the more effort you put in, the better quality vegetables you get. I took pride in the fact that I was carrying on the traditional vegetables, and I lived each day feeling fulfilled in my own way. Even calling it agricultural management, it's quite a sizable operation. Furthermore, since we also own other land and properties, the sums involved are substantial, and at our bank, a man in his 40s named Georgie has been assigned as our representative. He usually comes to our place to handle most of the procedures, but for renewing lease contracts, I have to go to the bank regularly. Normally that's not a problem, but during the busy harvesting season, it's quite difficult to find the time for that. That day too, I was extremely busy in the peak season. I somehow managed to make time and rushed straight from the fields to the major bank in my pickup truck, but the female receptionist named Wendy gave me an openly disgusted look. She twisted her face upon seeing me. When I entered the bank, I was wearing work clothes that could get dirty, since I had come in between tasks. On top of that, I had on boots a typical farmer style. Admittedly, it's not a neat and tidy appearance, but I had at least brushed off the mud and such out of basic courtesy. It's not some high-end hotel or a party venue. There shouldn't be any dress code for customers visiting a bank. In fact, there are even people who come in sweatpants and sandals, so there's no reason to make such a nasty face at someone in work clothes. Nevertheless, she looked me up and down, wrinkling her nose as if to say I was filthy. Then, she let out an exaggerated sigh. I didn't appreciate her rude attitude of deliberately making it obvious that she found me unpleasant. Yet, it wasn't something I felt the need to complain about either. I just wanted to quickly finish my business and get back to work. Thinking that, I asked with a wry smile for her to call my representative. "Excuse me, could you please call Georgie, my representative?" However, instead of calling him, she said something unbelievable. "And what business do you have with him? He's not free either. We both have limited time, you know." "I'm sorry, but I think you should refrain from wasting it." "No, that's not." I started to explain but stopped. I have no obligation to bother explaining to someone so rude. It's not even worth that effort. "Ah, forget it. Anyway, just call him for me, would you? He'll understand when you do." If I've said this much, anyone would normally infer that there's something going on. Yet, she still refused to put me through. In fact, she went on to disparage me in an even more sarcastic tone. Everyone says that, you know. People hoping for a loan, lying that there's an appointment when there isn't, insisting to just call them because they'll understand. What she's saying may well happen sometimes. But it's not up to her to decide whether to give a loan or not, and in the first place, I'm not here hoping for a loan. It just happens that Georgie, our representative, is also in charge of loans. "Is that so? But I'm different. If you check, you should realize that, so I'm sorry, but could you please call him quickly? I'm busy too, you know." It's not like I'm asking for anything difficult. I just want her to call my representative. That's all I'm requesting. I can't understand why she's so stubbornly refusing to put me through. There's no way to know if you're really different or not, is there? I've seen plenty of people like you too. I can pretty much tell from how you're dressed. You're... Saying that, she twirled the ends of her long hair with one hand while looking at me. If you're going to lie, you could have at least borrowed some proper clothes. When all she had to do was put me through, I've been insulted and had my time wasted for over 10 minutes now. Then your ability to judge people is completely useless. And you're just a receptionist. Your job is to receive customers and put them through, right? It's not your place to decide whether to refuse them or not. Now, hurry up and transfer me." I couldn't help raising my voice. Even I had reached my limit. Then, incredibly, instead of putting me through, she hurled awful abuse at me. Those words made me decide on a certain course of action. "Banks aren't charities, you know. We can't lend to people who don't have the ability to pay back. Trying to borrow money when you can't pay it back is the same as begging. Have you no shame ? Even so, treating a customer like a beggar is going too far. Those are not words she should be using to me, a customer, as a mere receptionist. Just who does she think she is? On top of that, she hurled even more abuse at me. Let me put it in a way you might understand. There's no money to lend to poor farmers like you. If you're working at a bank counter, there's a certain level of customer service you should provide to any client, regardless of who they are. It's unacceptable to look down on someone just because they're a farmer and treat them like a poor farmer. Admittedly, I did come in a pickup truck. And since I was planning to go back to the fields, I'm still wearing my work clothes without having changed. From that, she probably judged that I'm a farmer, but even so, that doesn't mean I should be scorned as a poor farmer. It's not like I caused her any trouble with my pickup truck or attire. I'm extremely busy, especially during this season. And yet, I finally managed to make time to come here. Later on, she would come to regret her behavior in this moment. As a result of this pointless back and forth, I decided enough was enough. Having had it, I simply said it out loud.
Forget it, I'm leaving. Then I'm canceling the land lease contract. What? Wait, you're leasing land? What? What do you mean? I'll call the representative, so please wait.
Suddenly flustered by the mention of leasing land, the woman panicked.
I just assumed you were here for a loan consultation. If that's not it, then it's fine. Georgie, was it exclamation question mark? I'll call him right away. If it's about leasing land, you should have said so from the start.
Now she's saying she'll call him right away, so I should wait, but I had no intention of listening anymore. After being treated this way, I have no lingering attachment to this bank. I can easily find other business partners elsewhere. It makes no difference to me whether I do business with them or not.
I said forget it. I'm leaving. Tell Georgie the contract won't be renewed, it's over. Wait. Please wait. I'll call Georgie. Hey, wait.
It's too late. Ignoring her calls for me to stop, I left the bank. As I drove my pickup truck out of the bank, my cell phone rang immediately. I pulled over to check, and the caller was Georgie from the bank. I heard you came by earlier. I was told you left. Did something happen? I was a little surprised that he hadn't heard anything from Wendy, but I replied calmly. Yes, that's right. I was treated very rudely at the reception. I intend to terminate our business relationship here. Could you please ask the receptionist, Wendy, what happened? She knows everything. Actually, I had been leasing land to the bank. The parking lot next to the bank is our land. The bank had asked us to sell it to them since there's no other land they can use for parking, but we didn't feel any immediate need to sell, so we've been leasing it to them with a contract renewal every 6 months. This time, I went to the bank for the renewal procedure. Not only that, but the profits from the fields, rental income from properties, all of our assets were entrusted to this bank. That's right, from the bank's perspective, I'm a valued customer. That's precisely why I even have a dedicated representative. Shocked by my sudden declaration of terminating our business, Georgie was astonished.
What exclamation question mark Wendy did? I am terribly sorry. I will confirm with her and have her apologize, so please, if we could just talk.
It seemed he really hadn't heard anything from her after all. Wendy probably didn't mention anything inconvenient for herself, and simply told him that she had called for Georgie, but I left. Without even understanding the situation.
Please, I beg you.
Georgie kept apologizing. I could practically see him bowing his head over the phone. However, he's not the problem. I had already decided not to forgive Wendy.
No, it's fine. I've already wasted enough time there. I can't waste any more. I'm extremely busy today. If you'll excuse me.
With that, I ended the call. I feel bad for Georgie getting caught up in this, but the receptionist is essentially the face of that bank. They're the first point of contact with customers, so I'll have to decline doing business with a bank where they judge customers based on their attire and vehicle and respond so rudely. My decision isn't simply because I was looked down upon as a farmer. They hired someone who judges people based on their clothes and occupation and put them at the reception desk. I can't trust a bank like that. Even after hanging up, there were several incoming calls, but I ignored them all. Leaving my cell phone in the truck, I went back to working in the fields. Just when I thought it was over, I was flabbergasted. Incredibly, in less than an hour, Mom Olivia showed up at the fields with Georgie in tow.
What exclamation question mark? What's going on? Why is Georgie with you, Mom?
According to Olivia, Georgie had suddenly stopped by the house. Georgie has been our representative since my parents' generation. It seems our receptionist was extremely rude to your daughter. Seeing how desperate he seemed, I decided to hear him out for the time being. He said he wanted to meet and apologize no matter what, so she brought him to the fields. I couldn't believe he'd get my retired mother involved. I questioned him in a slightly harsh tone.
Georgie, didn't I tell you earlier that I'm busy today? As you can see, we're in our peak season right now. I somehow managed to make time to come in the middle of that, only to be refused a transfer and spoken to rudely. I'm fed up. I can't spare any more time for you. Please leave. Ask Wendy about what happened.
I thought he'd give up after that, but Georgie suddenly bowed deeply. I am terribly sorry. Olivia hastily.
Oh my! Please stop that!
Shouted. But he remained motionless. I was at a loss with him like that.
Even if you bow your head, I still can't do the impossible. I'm incredibly busy right now.
This is not a lie or anything. I am literally very busy. It would be great if Olivia and Dad could help, but they both retired due to back pain, so that's difficult too. I can't ask other farmers for help either. They're all in their peak season as well. Then Georgie said something unbelievable.
I'll help. What should I do? Exclamation question mark.
As he spoke, he was already taking off his suit jacket and rolling up his sleeves.
What exclamation question mark?
Even I was surprised by this. Certainly, I'm so busy that I could use Georgie's help. There are simple tasks too, so if he's offering to help, it would indeed be appreciated. But, as I hesitated, Olivia said,
Hey, Georgie is offering to help, so why not let him? Then, with that free time, you can listen to what he has to say. Thank you very much. I'll do my absolute best, so please.
He nodded eagerly, seizing the opportunity. All right then. I reluctantly accepted his proposal. But surprisingly, he was quite skilled. He harvested the vegetables and stacked them well. Thanks to him, a task I expected to take about 3 hours alone was finished in 2 hours.
Have you perhaps done farm work before?
To my surprise, he stretched his back, laughed, and told me.
Actually, my grandmother used to have a home garden. I often helped out when I was little. It's surprising how much the body remembers.
Olivia brought us some tea, so as we took a break at the edge of the field, I explained the circumstances this time as promised.
Judging customers based on their clothes and vehicle, looking down on them, and hurling rude words. I can't trust a bank with a receptionist like that.
Hearing that, he nodded deeply several times as if finally understanding. I can't believe such a thing. Your anger is justified. That should never happen. I am terribly sorry. And then, actually, he shared the inside story. Apparently, Wendy is the bank president's daughter. She had initially been working at another branch, but after causing problems there, she was sent to this branch. Her work attitude was poor and the branch manager had warned her many times, but she never improved. By telling me these internal circumstances that normally shouldn't be disclosed to outsiders, his sincerity fully came through. And the reason why someone like her was at the reception desk. This incident is absolutely unforgivable. We will take firm action. First, could you please put the termination of our business on hold for the time being? Please judge based on our future response. Georgie spoke in a serious manner. I can't forgive Wendy, but I felt I could trust him. So I decided to give him a little leeway. The next day, the doorbell rang, and when I went outside, Georgie and Wendy were there. For some reason, they were both dressed in work clothes and wearing boots. We caused you a great deal of trouble yesterday. I am terribly sorry. I've brought Wendy here again to apologize. Come on, Wendy. Prompted by Georgie, Wendy bowed to me while averting her eyes. I was extremely rude yesterday. I apologize. Dissatisfied, with an attitude that clearly showed she was being forced to say it reluctantly. I cut her off.
If it's not a sincere apology, I don't need it.
Seeing this, Georgie scolded Wendy with a furious expression.
You still don't seem to understand what you've done. I explained that the survival of this branch depends on her. Are you trying to drive this branch to closure ?
I've known him for several years now, but this was the first time I saw him get angry. He was always smiling, so I thought he was a bit unreliable, but I gained new respect for him as someone who can properly say what needs to be said. Even Wendy couldn't help but uncomfortably avert her eyes at Georgie's harsh scolding. Still, she pursed her lips and argued back.
I did hear that, but isn't that an exaggeration? They're just farmers, you know? They can't have that much power.
Georgie yelled at her even more.
Our parking lot is on her land. She came yesterday to renew that contract. If we lose our business with her, we lose our parking lot. Who's going to come to a bank with no parking in that location ?
What he said must have finally reached that thick skull of hers. Hearing that, she turned pale.
No way! Isn't that our land ? It's her land. And that's not all. Her family is the biggest landowner in this whole area. We're entrusted with the sale and lease of their land, contract farming, and the management of those assets. She's an extremely important customer for us.
Even she was at a loss for words at this. He gave her a stern look, then turned back to me and made an unexpected proposal. Could you let her experience farm work as training during your busy season? I don't think you'll forgive us just for this, but please feel free to work her to the bone. For the first 3 days, I'll help out as well to supervise her. Hearing that, I couldn't help but smile. Since we're entering our peak season, even someone like her is better than nothing, and having Georgie there to supervise will be a huge help. It'll be a fitting punishment for Wendy too. But can she, who looked down on farmers, endure this job? As expected, Wendy started making a fuss at the words during the busy season.
What? Not just 1 day ? I didn't hear anything about doing it for that long. That's impossible.
As she hastily denied it, Georgie silenced her by saying,
If it's impossible, it can't be helped. If we lose a customer like her because of you, your father, the bank president, will have to take appropriate responsibility too. Dad has nothing to do with this !
Using his connections to get her hired, then forcibly reassigning his daughter who caused more problems to another branch. If that daughter then drives that branch to closure, he'll inevitably be held accountable. That's not a responsibility a mere receptionist can bear. Of course, The bank president who used his position to assign and spoil his daughter also bears responsibility. Wendy must have finally realized the gravity of what she had done, as she started trembling while gripping the sleeves of her work clothes. I turned a beaming smile towards her.
You'll be doing simple tasks, so it's fine even if you've never worked in the fields before. All you need is physical strength. Now then, shall we have you work to your heart's content?
Upon hearing this, the word despair appeared on her face. That evening, gazing at the fields dyed red by the sun, I let out a satisfied sigh.
Thank you. Thanks to you, Georgie, we were able to harvest much faster than I expected. No, I'm glad to be of help. We're the ones who caused you trouble.
With his hard work, our work efficiency increased by 1.5 times. The harvest I had given up on finishing before next week's rain now looks like it'll somehow make it in time. Well, as expected, she wasn't of much use.
Dig here. Carefully, so you don't damage the vegetables. Put more strength into it. Don't slack off.
Relentlessly instructed by Georgie like this all day, towards the end, she was sitting on the ground, crying as she dug up the soil. She probably never had to do this kind of work before. Her face was covered in sweat and dirt, and mud was caked all over her hair. Now that the work was finally over, Wendy collapsed on the ground, seemingly unable to speak. With a wry smile, I looked down at Wendy, who was sitting on the ground covered in mud.
Good work today. No, it's quite rewarding. I'll be back to help tomorrow too,
Georgie said with a refreshing smile.
Tomorrow too! !
In contrast to him, Wendy collapsed limply on the ground. And true to his word, Georgie brought Wendy to help the entire week. At first, she complained, but after a while, she seemed to give up and moved in silence. If she slacked off even a little,
do your best to somehow get her to withdraw the termination of our business. If this branch closes, it'll be your responsibility. It's your own rude words and actions that caused this. Show some sincerity.
She would be threatened. Georgie drilled farm work into Wendy during that week. And then, he lent her to us for a month under the pretext of employee training. Wendy, now bearing the future of the branch and even her father's future on her shoulders as she worked. I felt a little sorry for her, but if we didn't go this far, she probably wouldn't have understood the foolishness of her own actions. This training was quite effective. As I watched her digging in the soil, covered in mud and crying, I started to feel like I could continue the contract with the bank after all. At first, I was angry at her, but as I saw her going home exhausted and wobbling every day, my anger gradually subsided. Georgie must have anticipated this and planned this kind of training. He's quite the schemer himself. After the training, I went to the bank again and renewed the contract. Just as Georgie had planned. Seriously, I take my hat off to you. You knew it would turn out this way, didn't you?
No, I just showed my sincerity to the best of my ability.
Georgie processed the paperwork with a really nice smile. Wendy is no longer at the reception desk. After that training, we heard from the bank president that his daughter had resigned for personal reasons. Rather than personal reasons, it might be more accurate to say they made her quit before she could be fired. Apparently, just before hanging up, the bank president's voice could be heard cursing at his daughter over the phone.
The branch manager was out, so I took the call. They say they were a close parent and child, but it was terrible. I wonder if their relationship as parent and child is over now. I guess that's all their relationship amounted to in the end,
Georgie told me with a wry smile. It's good that we were somehow able to renew the contract, but if I had gone through with terminating our business, it would have caused the bank a huge loss. Not to brag, but just the assets we have deposited are worth that much, and if we stopped leasing the parking lot, the impact would have been immediate. Avoiding that wasn't because Wendy helped with the farm work, but because Georgie arranged it and moved my heart. Even if Wendy were to be reinstated, there's surely no place for her at that branch anymore. Incidentally, her father didn't come out of this unscathed either. It was good that he made his daughter quit, but it was too late. Through the branch manager, the circumstances this time and her past behavior were brought up at an executive meeting, and criticism from the other executives converged on the bank president. It even developed into a situation where he might have to resign.
Since we caused you trouble, I'll tell you this in secret. Please keep it strictly confidential. The bank president might be replaced soon,
Georgie said with a laugh. It's not hard to imagine how the bank president, who lost his job due to his daughter's foolish actions, will treat her. Thinking about Wendy's future, I muttered in my heart that it turned out to be a painful price to pay. Since then, there's been a small change in our fields. On weekends, an apprentice started coming to help. There was this strange person who had awakened to the joy of farming and wanted to help even just on weekends when he was off work, and I allowed it.
Nothing beats a drink after work,
Georgie, who for some reason was relaxing at our place. That's right, the apprentice is him. Since then, he's been coming to help almost every week, and when Olivia says, "Since you're here, why not have a meal before you go?" he invites himself into the house. How cheeky of him. But when I see him stuffing his mouth full of sandwiches,
"This sandwich is the best treat of all,"
and puffing out his cheeks happily, I can't help but laugh too. It must be rewarding to feed him. Olivia is also enthusiastically preparing various meals just for him.
"Quit the bank and come work for us. You can have a permanent position too." "What? No, I couldn't. Sharon would hate that."
"Oh, I wouldn't mind, you know? Hard workers with guts are valuable." When I teased him, his ears turned bright red, belying his age. The day when the joke is no longer a joke might be near.